Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. The Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts is proudly sponsored by the Global Wellness HQ community. It's an online membership group where we meet, we share ideas, we share insights, and we all work together and help one another discover our own personal wellness journeys. If you'd like to join us, you can easily click the link below or scan the QR code, and we love hearing your stories, so we hope to see you in the community.
Everyone, I want to introduce you to my new friend, Leah Roling. Leah, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Jeff.
All right, well, let's jump in and have some fun here. So first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Leah Roling, as Jeff mentioned. I am a high performance coach. I coach women and men, the brave ones, that is, who really are looking for more clarity in their life, more energy in their life. They typically are either entrepreneurs that own a business and that have to lead teams or manage employees, or a lot of my work is with dentists, working with them on not dentistry. I don't know anything about dentistry, but working with them on their own mindset and the art of leadership. So that's what I get to
do. So tell me, how did you get into the high performance coaching world? I think that's probably a great story to share with our audience.
Yeah, so I found this work, or maybe this work found me, because I was in corporate and I didn't love my job in corporate, but I always would say to those who believed me that it enabled me to do what I loved. And one time, my mom just kind of caught me off guard and she asked me how long I was going to continue the story. And I like, story? What do you mean story? She's like, this whole story that you share about not loving corporate, but enabling it for you to love what you do. Why don't you just do what you love? I'd always coached in like for the last 3 decades, but as a jobby, I like to call it. It was on the side so that I didn't have to be vulnerable, on the side so I didn't fail, on the side so that I would also say that if I did it full time, I might not love it. Right? As if your dream and your destiny you would ever dislike. But I took her words to heart, and shortly after that, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I spent 2 years kind of still in corporate, but because it enabled me then to take care of who I loved. And when she passed, I quit my corporate job and I started coaching full time, started my coaching business. And I literally do it every single day in her honor. I know she's here, so I know she sees me do it, but she wasn't here in the flesh doing it. And so that's how I got into this work. And this work has had a tremendous impact on my life and on the life of everybody that I get the pleasure of working with. So that's how I got into it.
I love it. And you told me previously how that path sort of led into dentistry, but let's talk about dentists for a minute. So what brought you to dentistry, and what are you discovering through the dentists that you work with?
Well, it's interesting because you had mentioned this book earlier, the Who, Not How book, right? And I would like to think that it was a who that brought me into dentistry. It was a dentist. I hadn't niched dentistry out as my coaching background, but a dentist did coaching with me. And the model and the tools that I use, the mindset work that I do, and the emotional acuity that I teach aren't things that most people know. They're not curriculum taught in our schools. There's no thought school, there's no emotion school, there's not even a behavioral school. Like, you might take a behavioral change course or an org behavior course, but other than that, like, we're just running around with all this curriculum and not really knowing what it means to be a human, not really knowing. We don't have the curriculum of life. We have curriculum of academic, and we have curriculum of even dentistry. And so the tools that I shared with her allowed her to get her life back so that she could do dentistry better. And so that was really profound. And then she introduced me to lots of other dentists, and then lots of other dentists introduced me to other dentists. And so that's who I primarily coach, surely by way of word of mouth and transformation stories. So I like to say that dentistry found me, and I'm so glad it did. So
I love that. Now, I'm going to come back to something you said early on, because I think this is probably really important to pull out. You mentioned in passing you work predominantly with women, and then the men who are brave enough. Tell me about that bravery. What bravery do they need? Because I think that's probably an important distinction for people.
I said it kind of tongue in cheek. However, I think there's an element to feeling, like feelings.
Yeah.
And at least where I live in Iowa, in the Midwest of this great state, of this great country, no one really knows how to feel feelings. Like, we're taught to either sweep them under the rug, like where all other feelings and problems should go, or feel them. But really, we don't have a process for feeling them. So we're like, okay, all right, Leah says to feel our feelings. How? Right? And then we have this huge emotional language, of which we have a very small emotional language. We think in, we feel good, we feel fine, we feel bad. Or if we're going to get really robust, we might add angry or frustrated. But there's a huge, so I use this, like my husband, I tease him all the time. He says that he doesn't have a lot of feelings, he just has 3. I'm like, no, you just have a small emotional language, right? Yeah. He's fine, good, and okay. And so what I said about brave men is, I think women in general have a really hard time tapping into and processing their emotions. And men have been conditioned, again, at least the men that I've been able to work with and had the pleasure of meeting, have been conditioned to rise above their feeling, to not feel, because feeling is for the weak, and feeling is for the very vulnerable and the bleak. And what I like to teach in the models that as part of my framework, that feelings are everything. Yeah. They're everything. Like, think about anything that you want to do or not do. It's because you want to feel a certain way, or you not want to feel a certain way. So whether or not you have a limited vocabulary or not, the braver you can be to tap into your emotion, the better. So.
And I think that's a really good distinction. I mean, we live in this world of stoicism, and I was raised in the boys don't cry sort of world, and I think we've all learned that's the John Wayne version of manliness. You just stuff those feelings down, and how do you become your best self when you're literally living with a stranger in your head?
So yeah. Rub some dirt on it. Get right. Like, there's not time. We don't have time to feel here. We have to do. Yeah. And so all of the coaching has been around, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are you doing? What action do you need to take? And we forget that the best action is fueled only by feeling.
Yeah. And that's, it's funny, when one of my boys had they were in a sports team, and they got injured, and the coach came out and said, "Oh, just shake it off." And I was like, "Would you just back off for a minute? Let him process. He just got hit in the face with a ball. He's bleeding. Let's not talk about shaking it off and walking it off. That worked in the 70s. Today, we're going to recognize that he might want to just sit there for a minute.
Yeah, or he might need some ice.
Yeah, or a cloth. It was just. But yeah, I think that's So let's talk about a little bit more about dentists, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize some of the significance of that particular profession as a choice. What are some of the big issues that you are dealing with as a peak performance coach?
So I think most dentists, and again, I'm gonna blanket like most, right? I'm not saying all. There's obviously outliers on either side, but most dentists are perfectionists by trade. I mean, if you think about it, to get it right or wrong in the chair, it's a millimeter. And the biggest problem most of my dentists have is when you take that very exacting, that very perfectionistic tendency that is required as a dentist, and you take it out of the op room. You destroy relationships. You destroy not only the relationships with others, but you destroy your relationship with yourself, because you're forever searching for that perfection that is just unattainable. And then a lot, again, not all, but a lot of my dentists are also people pleasers. So we've got this perfectionistic, people pleasing mindset, emotional being, putting themselves out there into a world where they feel completely lost because they're people pleasing to the extent that they don't even know who they are anymore, just in hopes that they'll make other people happy so that then they can be happy with themselves. And they're never going to be happy with themselves because they're trying to attain something that's unattainable. And so really teaching them not only what it means to be a human, the curriculum, how to think, how to feel, how to show up being the very best version of yourself, which, P.S., isn't the perfect version of yourself. It's just that next best version of yourself, to really get into alignment with who it is that you are, which means we have to drop the people pleasing, because people pleasing is completely out of alignment. It's lying. That's what it is. And then really just recalibrating the art of leadership. And one of my very favorite habits, and it's the first habit I teach as it relates to leadership, is you have to know thyself. You have to know what you think about and have mastery of thought. And you have to know what you're feeling and have emotional acuity, because you can only lead others when you know who you are. And for most of my dentists, they've completely lost their sense of self. And then you also ask about what else? It's a very high suicide rate industry. There are lots of and there's lots of suicides in all industry, again, obviously, but I think it's a very lonely industry. A lot of my docs feel alone. They don't have the camaraderie. They've also have to be a scientist in dentistry and a sudden entrepreneur business owner. They're not taught business either. And they're also not taught, so they're not really taught how to be a human. They're not taught how to be a leader. They're not taught how to be a manager. They're not taught how to be a boss. They're not taught how to be an entrepreneur, but they're taught how to do dentistry and how to do it perfectly. That's what they're taught. And then when you think about the energy of people that come in, it's not like they're giving massages or dropping off flowers at doors, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with people that really probably don't want to be there. And again, there are outliers. There's lots of people that love their dentist and they love going to the dentist. But for most of us, we don't love going to the dentist. We don't love laying there with our most vulnerable part of our body exposed and feeling the judgment that we didn't do a good enough job brushing and flossing our teeth, right? Most of us don't like it. And so we bring in that energy and they have to feel that energy all day long. Now, granted, we don't come in and we say, well, at least most of us don't come in and say, oh, I hate being here. Although some of us do, but we're energetic beings, and they feel that you would rather be doing anything, maybe even eating bark off a tree, than being in their room. So there's a lot of things going on for these docs and just for humans doing work everywhere. But those are some of the specific, I would say, core issues that they have to face on a very daily, regular basis.
Well, and just I want to point out two things for the listeners here. But number one, you list off one thing that they're trained to be good at and perfection at, a long list of other things that they have to do, but they aren't necessarily good at. I think that applies to a lot of people, but I can see definitely with dentistry. I mean, the level of precision, like, I've had friends who are dentists, and I don't even know how they look through those little microscopic goggly things all day long. I'd go cross-eyed from it. But, it is that, like, the difference between lawsuit and success is like a fraction of a millimeter. Sorry, everyone. We had a little bit of a technical glitch. The world of the internet is not always friendly. So what I was saying to Leah before we dropped was, dentists are trained to be really good at dentistry, and then they've got one thing that literally gives them that sense of accomplishment, but we throw all these other things on their shoulders that give them the opposite. I don't know what the opposite of accomplishment is, but I feel like there's a lot of reasons for self-doubt and frustration. Nobody wants to do the things they're bad at. It's frustrating. But they're also in this world where, they have to wear those special glasses to see things. And, as you said, it's the difference between a fraction of a millimeter is success and oops. So now the other thing I'd point out for those of listening, I think this is absolutely a fascinating conversation, because we could just as well, and I know Leah knows this, but I want to point out for the audience, we could be talking about almost any other profession, any other entrepreneur. We tend to fall in love with the thing that we think we do, and then one day somebody walks up and says, congratulations, you're an entrepreneur, or yay, you own a business. And very few professionals I know actually identify as a business owner. When I work with a lot of accountants, and they'll say, no, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm an accountant. And it's like, but you run your own business.
Right, right.
So I think this is a really, really good conversation, because I think people don't really recognize just how alone some entrepreneurs feel. And the fact that I don't think all of them, it's fascinating that you talk about, most human beings, if we aren't taught how to manage our emotions, how to manage, our response to the stimuli in our environment, it's a fascinating thing that, we teach kids how to tie their shoes, and we teach them, how to balance their math homework, but we never teach them how to manage their emotions. So I think that's a fun little thing. Now I'm going to get into some practical. So this is one of my favorite questions, and I can't wait to hear the answer from you. But what is the best business advice you've ever received, and how did it impact you?
I love this question. How much time do we have? But I can only give one, my best. And
Best or favorite?
relevant for the audience, I hope. Probably the best business advice was when I was first starting out. Now I know a lot of the audience that's listening to this are, really accomplished already. But when I was first starting out, there is that fear of being seen, starting small. There is that fear that people will judge you. There's that fear that people will tell you that you don't know what you're talking about. And, who are you to say? You're brand new in this space. And my coach at the time shared this with me, and it stuck, and it's still stuck, right? Even many, 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 many years later. But he's like, Leah, the people that are ahead of you in the game aren't looking at you, aren't judging you. As a matter of fact, they are cheering for you, the majority of them, because they know your struggle. They know what you've been through, because guess what? They've been through it too. And instead of looking to them as to why you're not there, right? Accept where you are and use them as your inspiration. Because they too are humans that probably have similar struggles, similar obstacles. They too probably maybe have kids, have husbands, have families, have sickness, have disease, have all of it. And they were able to figure it out. And so if they are able to figure it out, then you too can steal their and borrow their belief that you can figure it out. And for the people that do judge, they're probably not where you are. And judgment that they say about you has more to do and to say about them than you. So can you allow their judgment to fuel your motivation so that you can be an example of what's possible?
Love that.
So that, and I still, like, with every post and with every podcast, there's this thought in my head, like, what will people say? What will people, like, what if they don't agree? Like, what if they judge? And my very favorite answer to that is, I just like to give people permission to be wrong about me.
I love that. And I think that's the thing. Too many experts get hung up on the fact that they need to be an expert. But sometimes if you're half a step ahead of somebody and you can say, hey, watch your step, that's a big accomplishment. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about mistakes, and we'll turn it around to some practical advice. But I'm going to guess when you're meeting new people, we talk about some of the big mistakes they're making that you wish they just stop. It's I watch people and I'm like, please stop, just mind the step. You're going to bang your head, whatever. But what are some things that you like to help people avoid doing when they come and work with you?
So probably one of my very favorites is, again, we've been conditioned to believe that the situation, things outside of us, other people, create our feelings. We've been conditioned to believe that our husbands frustrate us or our kids drive us crazy. And we delegate our emotional well-being to other humans that are struggling with their own emotional well-being. And so my very favorite thing to teach is that situations and other people do not hurt. What hurts is the meaning that we give them by way of our thoughts. And our thoughts aren't facts, right? Our thoughts may be true, maybe not true, all optional. And our thoughts, right, create a chemical biohormonal vibration in the body, and we label it an emotion, right? Without our thought, the situation, the other person, our husbands, our in-laws, whomever we think we have conflict with, can't affect us without our permission by sentences in our head. And so that alone is so empowering, knowing that you have ultimate control on how you think, how you feel, how you show up, and ultimately every single result in your life. And it's not conditioned by anything outside of us. And so for me, that's been the biggest thing, because we make a lot of mistakes when we try to control other people that have agency, and then we get exhausted because they're not doing what we think they should be doing, right? And I always say lovingly with a wink that people suck at being who we want them to be. Always. They do. They're terrible at it, but they're very good at being them. And
we suck at trying to be them, so it's
right,
fair.
right? Oh my goodness, yes. So
I
that's
love that.
people from making, because when you make that mistake, you disempower yourself, you relegate your emotional well-being to someone else who also too struggles with their own emotions. They haven't learned this work, and you therefore become powerless in a world, in a body, as a human, that you have all the power.
I love it. And I think that's, I have this conversation with my 10-year-old, when you're trying to control somebody else, you're always feeling frustrated because, like you said, they'll never do even if they follow you loosely, they'll never do exactly what you say, when you say it, how you say it. You know, it's we are perfectly imperfect, and we need to embrace that. Uh,
Yes.
Now let's switch to the positive. So what are your favorite three things that you work on with your clients when they come to you for that empowerment coaching?
Three favorite things. Awesome. Okay, so three of my very favorite things. So I always start almost every single call with a model, which I learned and then kind of reformulated from Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School, and then I learned all sorts of things when I was getting my PhD through quantum medicine with Joe Dispenza and the Bruce Liptons of the world. But it's the way the world works. And so it's a model on how it is that our thoughts create our feelings create our action, and how we show up then ultimately creates our results. So that's the model. The next thing that I love to teach is about relationships and how we infer that relationships are quote unquote difficult, or having difficult conversations are quote unquote difficult, but they're not difficult. You make them difficult by way of your thinking. And so people are just other people having a similar human experience. And when you could understand that while you're running models, they too are running models. And it's just like you said, two imperfect people coming together and just allowing other people to be them. How nice of us, right?
Yeah.
And not bringing all of this judgment on who they should be and who you need them to be. Because at the end of the day, the only reason why you want people or need people to be anything different than who they are is so that you can feel better. And that's available to you now. So I do a lot of relationship coaching on relationships, because it's probably the biggest stressor that most of us have is with other humans. And then lastly, if I had to put it up there, I would talk a lot about wellness and well-being, and how to in live as vibrant and as energetic as possible.
I love it. I love it. Now, I could talk to you all day, and if you let me, I would, but I do want to respect your time. How can people, what are you working on, and how can people get in touch with you, get to know you better? How can they learn more about working with you, or just learn more about what you do?
Mm. So I think if people want to just get to know a little bit about who I am, I have a podcast. It's called The Becoming You Show. And every Friday I chat and have a conversation about 30 minutes based on like real live events, situations that are happening. And what I like to do is I like to create little frameworks around them. So it's not just me spouting off like what's going on in my life and what's happening and what I had to eat for breakfast and whatnot. It's me really just taking um, some of my clients' experiences, because they're not anomalies. They're experiences that we all have, and then breaking them down into like little frameworks or little bullet points on how you can apply, if that is what you're experiencing, how you can apply it in your life today for like massive action today. So that's the Becoming You show. I also am launching a high performance course. It's a program, actually. It's 3 months, and it is one of my favorite programs to teach, because I find that so many of us are very high achieving. But also, for so many of us, we haven't learned how to be high achieving without the burnout. We haven't learned how to be high achieving while maintaining positive relationships and our well being, right? And so we burn it all down, either by lack of balance, a lack of alignment, by giving everything to our profession, or we take care of our health and we take care of our relationships, but at a cost of our performance edge. So by knowing these habits and by really mastering these pillars, what I'm going to call pillars of high performance, you can really learn to not only have the professional success, but the personal success by way of again, well-being and positive relationships. So that's a program that is near and dear to my heart because I had to work through all of those and solve for all of those things in corporate with all the burnout, and I've seen the transformation on the other side. So yeah, so that's my program that I'm launching. My website is www.leahroling with just one L.com, and there's all sorts of freebies on there. So there's workouts, and there's my favorite book list, and there's a confidence course there, and there's a clutter-free quiz. It's spring when we're recording this, so everybody's kind of got that clutter-free bug. That's on there. So yeah, so that's how you can reach me.
I love it. Well, Leah, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today, and I really appreciate you sharing your insight. I'm sure we'll have you back and we'll have more conversations, but thank you for joining us today.
I would love that. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.